Good morning to you on this Friday morning. We're off to a late start, but we will continue with a new set of chats on radio on this, the 6th. It's a Friday morning, and I trust it's a forward leaning Friday morning for you. I'm in the hot seat this morning, a seat which is getting hotter, but it's my first time going solo. So we are live, and we are talking about a bit of a different subject this morning. We are discussing the importance of thinking well. What does thinking well look like? And how can we develop this skill as those who are part of the family of God? I'm going to do 4 teaching windows here, and I'm going to let some light shine in on the issue because it's quite important for us to ramp up our mental horsepower as believers so that we can engage well, engage calmly and lovingly in the workplace and in the workspace. But in order to do that, we need to cultivate some very good thinking habits. Someone has said that the way to ramp up your mental horsepower or being able to think well is, do something different each day, do something new, such as listen to different music or switch hands. If you're a right-hander, start writing with your left hand. If you're a left-hander, start writing with your right hand. I've often done that when I'm bored and I'm sitting somewhere where I can't do much. Start practicing left hand writing skills. But for us as the people of God, let's go to the scriptures now and let's look at what Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7 has to say. For it talks about the importance in the book of growing in wisdom. And the daddy is talking to his boy, his son, about moving from naivety or naivete to becoming wise, to becoming wiser still. And how does that happen? Moving from naive to wiser still. Well, the dad is teaching his boy the importance of living in fidelity to the flow of reality. And that's where you need to have your mind engaged. It's like thinking with the brain in mind. You've got thinking, you've got the brain, and you've got the mind. And each of those is quite a different sphere or entity. The mind goes beyond the brain in time and space. The brain is that organ located in my head where good thinking needs to take place. And so chapter 23, verse number 7 is very specific in terms of how that as believers, we are called upon to cultivate this skill of thinking well. It says, for as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. I want to suggest to you this morning that you are not what you think you are. What you think you are. Let me repeat that. You are not what you think you are. What you think you are. And that's not just a play on words, because these proverbs are potent. They carry high potency. Because you need to understand that these proverbs rose out of stories that were constantly communicated, talked about, gossiped in the workplace, in the workspace, and in the home and living space. So these one-liners or these packs of proverbs surfaced within the context of real-world communication. In our own cultural group, we have so many sayings, and normally they are quite humorous. And you only understand them if you have grown up inside of the culture. And it goes for every culture. You can only really say you understand a culture once you understand its humor. I want to add to that and say, once you understand its proverbs and its sayings. So, what you think is quite important, very important actually goes into the whole sphere of crucial what you are. For as a man thinks in the control room of his life, because that's what the heart is, it's the control center of the human being. And so the daddy is talking to his boy as a lifelong learner and says, my son, you must move from going from naive to wiser still, or else what will happen? You will be senseless, become stupid, and eventually end up as a scoffer. And so this beautiful proverb of as a man thinks in his heart so easy appears in a clump or cluster of proverbs. Proverbs go as one-liners. They function in clusters and clumps. Like the first 9 chapters of Proverbs would be uh, of one block of teaching, but it is continuous run on lines, as it were, where the daddy is talking to his boy about who he is to avoid. Avoid the bad boys, avoid the bad girls, and watch your passions. Dad has all those interesting little sex talks about sex and sexuality. And so, in this clump of Proverbs, going from chapter 22, verse 22, all the way to chapter 3, verse number 8, the dominating idea is money making, the making of money. There are good ways to make money, there are bad ways to make money. And then the daddy talks about going to dinners where you show your true colors as a glutton. You become a gluttonous guest, and you have this horrible host that is constantly trying to figure out in his own mind how much of his food you are eating. And that's the context here of verse uh, number 7 in chapter 23. And so he's thinking one thing. You may be overtaken with the wonderful delicacies that you are popping into your mouth, but he's counting the cost, and he's really hating every moment of your being there. And so we need to understand that in order to generate good mental horsepower, we need to start our brains through constant training of our minds. And how do we train our minds? Well, get the biblical narrative into your mind so that it can get into your soul. How do you imbibe a worldview? Well, you imbibe a worldview by listening to the storyline in your culture, the storyline of your culture. You want to get God's frame of reference into your mind and into your soul? Then listen to the biblical story as it unfolds across 66 books. It's called the storyline of the scriptures. When you imbibe that storyline, it will pervade your thinking. It will shape your thinking. It will be able to give you sharp perceptions. And so we need to learn to use our eyes, our ears, and our mouths. As John Lennox, that great mathematician, says, learn to use your eyes, ears, and mouth according to their numerosity. It's 2 eyes, it's 2 ears, and 1 mouth. And for many of us, we froth at the mouth and have to be carried away. We have verbal diarrhea. We aren't keen listeners. We are prone to giving out answers all the time. because that is informed by what I call systems thinking. You see, systems, men and women, work well for machines, right? An organization. But systems don't work well when it comes to human beings and people because they are not machines. And right inside of the believing community, in the assembly, we've got systems, isms that we have bought into hook, line, and sinker that has so impacted our minds, and we cannot think outside of those systems. Think of any ism: communism, socialism, evolutionism. Any ism is an ideology, it's an idolatry of ideas that we embrace, which makes us susceptible to idolatry. I call it an idolatry of ideas. But of all people on the planet, we need to be free thinkers because we believe in free thinking and free speech. I can say what is on my mind. Have you ever sat in a Bible study where people are speaking their minds around what they understand is happening in the biblical text? Oh, but you say you must impact their thinking and control their thinking. Who says? When the believing community engages around the biblical text in good faith conversations, because they understand it is the biblical story that shapes their mind, shapes their thinking, and frames the kinds of questions and good questions they need to ask, then, well, this changes the whole landscape. And that's what I want to talk into over 3 more sessions. How to think well. But to start out by understanding that thinking well has to do with what you think you are, because you are really going to live what you really believe. Not what you say you believe, but what you have embodied and embraced and made it part of your very being. I'm thinking of that beautiful hymn that says, "May the mind of Christ my Savior live in me from day to day, by his love and power overflowing all I do and say. I'm not an automaton or a robot, an automaton. I am a human being. I am still an image bearer. That image is tarnished, but I am still an image bearer. I'm a reflector. I image God. And so, what about imaging him in my thinking? And so, next week on Monday, same time, same place, we will give you the next exciting episode in how to think well. So, thank you for listening. May God bless you and have a good weekend.